The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Raine Musñgi. Catch up with us on Business Brief. U.S. President Donald Trump hopes Russia and Ukraine will make a deal this week to end the conflict in Ukraine. Trump said in a post on Truth Social that should both countries agree to a peace deal, they can do business with the U.S. This comes as Vladimir Putin's Easter truce expired, with the two countries blaming each other for breaking it. The Russian leader said he had ordered his forces to stop all military activity along the front line for 30 hours last Saturday evening until midnight on Sunday. But on Sunday evening, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the Russian army had violated Putin's ceasefire more than 2,000 times during the day. He proposed Sunday that Russia abandon drone and missile strikes on civilian infrastructure for at least 30 days. Also Sunday, United States Special Envoy to Russia and Ukraine, General Keith Kellogg, said a NATO membership for Ukraine was off the table and that a minerals deal was part of the solution for a comprehensive ceasefire and permanent peace deal. China on Monday warned countries against striking a broader economic deal with the United States at its expense, ratcheting up its rhetoric in a spiraling trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Beijing will firmly oppose any party striking a deal at China's expense and will take countermeasures in a resolute and reciprocal manner. That's according to its Commerce Ministry. The ministry was responding to a Bloomberg report that the Trump administration is preparing to pressure nations seeking tariff reductions or exemptions from the U.S. to curb trade with China, including imposing monetary sanctions. Meanwhile, DHL Express, a division of Germany's Deutsche Post, said it would suspend global business-to-consumer shipments worth over $800 to individuals in the United States. That starts April 21. That comes as U.S. customs regulatory changes have lengthened clearance. DHL blamed the halt on new U.S. customs rules, which require formal entry processing on all shipments worth $800. The minimum had been $2,500 until it changed on April 5. DHL said business-to-business shipments would not be suspended but could face delays. Shipments under $800 to either businesses or consumers were not affected by the changes. The move is a temporary measure. DHL said last week it would continue to process shipments from Hong Kong to the United States in accordance with the applicable customs rules and regulations and would work with the customers to help them understand and adapt to the changes that are planned for May 2. A Boeing jet intended for use by a Chinese airline landed back at the plane maker's U.S. production hub on Sunday. It's a victim of the tit-for-tat bilateral tariffs launched by President Donald Trump in his global trade offensive. Reuters reports the 737 MAX, which was meant for China's Xiamen Airlines, landed at Seattle's Boeing field Sunday, painted with Xiamen livery. It is not clear which party made the decision for the aircraft to return to the U.S. The return of the 737 MAX, Boeing's best-selling model, is the latest sign of disruption to new aircraft deliveries from a breakdown in the aerospace industry's decades-old duty-free status. The tariff war and apparent U-turn over deliveries comes as Boeing has been recovering from an almost 5-year import freeze on 737 MAX jets in a previous round of trade tensions. Trump this month raised baseline tariffs on Chinese imports to 145%. In retaliation, China has imposed a 125% tariff on U.S. goods. Aviation consultancy IBA says a Chinese airline taking delivery of a Boeing jet could be crippled by the tariffs, given that a new 737 MAX has a market value of around $55 million. In Asian markets, Japan's Nikkei opened down slightly as other markets in Asia edged higher Monday. That's as investors turn more hopeful that U.S. President Donald Trump would be able to broker trade deals with some of its top trading partners. Chinese shares ticked up as Beijing expectedly kept its loan prime rates unchanged Monday, with a one-year LPR at 3.1% and the 5-year at 3.6%, as the central bank appears focused on stabilizing the yuan amid trade tensions with the U.S. Australian and Hong Kong markets were closed for the Easter holiday. The dollar tumbled on Monday as investor confidence in the U.S. economy took another hit over Trump's plans to shake up the Federal Reserve, which would throw into question the independence of the central bank. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said over the weekend that the president and his team were continuing to study whether they would fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell just a day after Trump said Powell's termination cannot come fast enough, as he called for the Fed to cut interest rates. Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says they will emphasize fairness in any discussion with the U.S. on exchange rates. That's after Trump accused Tokyo of intentionally weakening its currency to give its exporters an unfair advantage. Meanwhile, Bitcoin rallied to its highest level since Trump's Liberation Day tariff announcement. In commodities, oil prices fell about 1% on Monday after nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran progressed, reducing concerns the dispute will reduce supply from the major Middle Eastern producer. Gold rose to a record as a U.S.-led trade war underpinned demand for haven assets, with data due in the coming days that may highlight early signs of damage to the global economy. Meanwhile, golf superstar Rory McIlroy is hitting financial eagles off the green. Investopedia reports his net worth now stands at $170 million, boosted by PGA purses, equity deals, and lucrative endorsements with Nike and TaylorMade. With a business portfolio as sharp as his swing, McIlroy is proving he's not just a player on the course, but in the boardroom too. We have to pause for a few reminders, but the biggest business stories from around the country are up next. Keep it here on Business Brief, only on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Welcome back to Business Brief. Profits of the Bank of the Philippine Islands surged to record highs in the first quarter. Our correspondent Sujin Kim joins us on the line for details. Sujin, go ahead.
Yes, Raine, the Bank of the Philippine Islands set a new record in the first quarter of 2025, kicking off the year with 16.64 billion pesos in net income, 9% higher than the same period last year. This marks the third consecutive year of record-breaking profits for BPI, driven by strong net interest income, a 13.1% surge in revenues, and expenses that remained well managed at 12.7%, bringing its cost-to-income ratio down to 45%. The bank also posted a robust 13.2% loan growth in Q1, as non-institutional lending, including consumer, auto, mortgage, and SME loans continued to expand rapidly, now accounting for 28.8% of its total portfolio. However, executives warned that the institutional loan book could face headwinds in the coming months, particularly from the uncertainty brought by escalating global tariffs and geopolitical volatility. Despite these challenges, BPI reaffirmed its target of 12 to 13% loan growth for the full year, citing strong consumer confidence, resilient spending on essentials and travel, and a well-insulated Philippine economy supported by domestic consumption. On the wealth management front, BPI is targeting a 15 to 18% increase in assets under management this year, building on the 1.53 trillion pesos recorded in 2024. The bank also remains on track to exceed its 1 trillion peso sustainability-linked portfolio goal ahead of its 2026 target. Meanwhile, Senior VP of Ayala Land, Mariana Zobel de Ayala, today was elected to the BPI board. And those are latest updates from Makati City. Back to you, Raine.
Thank you so much for that report, Sue Jinkan. The Commission on Elections unveiled today the Random Manual Audit Committee for next month's vote. Our correspondent Joash Malimban filed this report from Pasay City.
The Random Manual Audit launched here in Pasay City serves as an additional layer of vote verification, especially with the implementation of a hybrid system. This means that besides automated counting, there will also be manual counting of randomly selected ballots without the use of machines. This is to ensure that the votes reflected in the ballots match the data transmitted to the servers. The committee is composed of representatives from the Department of Education, NAMFREL, PPCRV, Lente, Philippine Statistics Authority, Philippine Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and other partner agencies. The random manual audit will be conducted in selected clustered precincts for local voters and in online voting posts for overseas internet voters. Audit teams will be formed for each clustered precinct and will mostly be composed of public school teachers or trained electoral board members. According to RMAC Head Director Mona Lisa Mamukid, the random manual audit will begin on May 13, a day after the election.
Joash Malimban, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
The Philippine economy is showing signs of resilience, with first quarter growth expected to hit 6%, despite global uncertainty and the rising threat of trade tensions. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says his 6 to 6.5% GDP growth forecast for the year is still in sight, even as the U.S. imposed new tariffs on global exports. If achieved, that would outpace the revised 5.9% growth in Q1 of 2024 and land at the lower end of the government's 6 to 8% target for 2025. NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan earlier said a 6% growth clip is feasible thanks to cooling inflation, interest rate cuts, and sustained domestic consumption. The Philippines is unlikely to achieve upper middle income status this year amid modest global growth and uncertainties. But economic officials say the goal remains within reach, possibly by next year. Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan says the World Bank classification is based on this year's economic performance, but won't be finalized until data is released in mid-2026. He also tempered expectations for exports, saying overall growth this year may be negative, though the decline is expected to be temporary. As of July 2023, the World Bank still classifies the Philippines as a lower middle-income economy, just short of the upper threshold. It's time to overhaul EDSA. That's the plan of the Marcos administration, according to Transport Secretary Vince Dizon. In an interview with the Bilyonaryo News Channel, Dizon said part of the plan is to move the bus carousel to another lane. Despite this, Dizon asserts that developing Metro Manila's mass transport system and not road widening is a solution to traffic in the metropolis.
The methodology is going to be going lane by lane. So they're going to start with the inner lanes, so that's the current busway lane. So the current busway lane is going to move one lane out. It will still be dedicated. So for all our commuters out there who depend
the busway will still
on the
be
busway,
there.
The busway will continue in its present form. It's just going to be moved one lane out, both north and south. So there will be 3 lanes left for cars. But we think that we'll be able to mitigate that by doing other mitigating interventions, which we'll be announcing maybe in the next week.
The Philippines and the U.S. kick off their annual large-scale military drills known as Balikatan. Considered the Super Bowl of drills, more than 14,000 troops are taking part in the exercises, which will run until May 9. The drills include a multi-maritime event that will be joined for the first time by Japan's self-defense force. 19 other countries were invited as observers, including France, Canada, Germany, and the UK. The 40th Balikatan comes amid continuing tensions between Manila and Beijing in the West Philippine Sea. Port operator ICTSI is making waves in Brazil. The global port operator has acquired a 47% stake in a 32-hectare Rio de Janeiro marine property adjacent to its Rio, Brazil terminal. The move boosts immediate capacity and sets the stage for a future private use terminal as ICTSI eyes long-term growth in one of South America's busiest port regions. Meanwhile, Alt Energy has locked in fresh capital for its Alabat wind project. The company confirmed a 3.256 billion peso drawdown from RCBC, part of a 5.3 billion peso facility funding on its onshore wind project in Quezon province. It's a major milestone for the clean energy player as it powers forward with renewable ambitions. On to the markets now. Philippine shares return to the green. The main index starting off the week after a two-day holiday in positive territory alongside most Asian peers. The PSEI closed Monday slightly higher, just a tenth of a percent or less than a tenth of a percent to 61.38. Value turnover reached 4.5 billion pesos, while decliners edged out advancers 109 to 93. Still, gains were pushed up by mining and oil, up 3.2%, with Razon-led APX mining surging 10.5%. At the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 56 pesos and 58 centavos to the US dollar, stronger than Wednesday's close of 56.80. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel.